So hi, I'm Dan Joseph. I'm a GIS officer at American Red Cross in their International Services Department. A bunch of my colleagues here. We work with other Red Cross and Red Crescent national societies around the world in preparing for and responding to natural disasters. And tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about how we are looking to use street-level imagery for our work in disaster preparedness, response, and recovery. Max stole a little bit of my thunder earlier, but everybody knows what this is. Google kind of introduced the world to the idea of Street View, driving around collecting imagery and allowing people to access these pictures of places of the world that they might not otherwise have been to. But Google, you have to access that imagery through their web interface, and you have to use it like in their browser to see like where the Starbucks is so that they can earn ad revenue. So what's great is now there's a couple of projects, two among them being Mapillary and OpenStreetCam, that are looking to crowdsource repositories of street-level imagery. And why do they want to get the imagery itself and not just be able to view it through Google? Max touched on this. You can do all sorts of cool things, like you can build 3D reconstructions of the world from this 2D imagery. You can build complex computer algorithms, so you can do image segmentation and feature extraction, being able to tell what's a road, what's a car, what's the curb is super useful for things like the future self-driving cars and for making a better map. It can also be kind of amusing when it thinks horses being ridden across the mall are actually giant oddly shaped people. Mapillary does give back to the open data community. They make that layer of street signs that they've extracted from the imagery available for people to use to update and improve OpenStreetMap. You can also use the imagery itself, as Max covered, in the OpenStreetMap editors. Load it as a layer, and then use it to look at commercial establishments and verify the names of stores, or check in on the progress of construction. And here you can see that the Mapillary imagery is more recent than the satellite imagery, showing that the construction of this apartment complex is quite progressed from the empty lot that it was when the satellite imagery was snapped. People contribute to these repositories a variety of ways. You can download an app to your cell phone, and as you're walking around, use your phone to take pictures and later upload. Any camera that has a GPS and tags the images, you can go around with that. So I have these little Sony action cameras that sometimes I walk around with it attached to my backpack, but that's not super fast, so sometimes I strap it to my bike, and that covers ground a little bit more quickly. Or you can get a suction mount and stick it to your windshield or to the front of your car or something like that. But why stop at one camera when you can have 3 or even 4 cameras, as Max showed earlier? And these are great, not just for capturing tons of pictures of yourself, which when you're turning them on and getting ready to go, but also for gathering valuable data about some place where you're interested in learning more about it. We've used this collection of street-level imagery in a variety of contexts. In the Philippines, where we helped run with the Philippine Red Cross some recovery programs after Typhoon Haiyan in 2013 to kind of track progress and changes in a number of the villages where we were running recovery programs. And here, actually, we use a 360 camera to collect imagery of the village. In Canaan, an area in Haiti, north of Port-au-Prince, prior to the earthquake of 2010, this was an undeveloped, empty hillside. And now it's quite possibly the second most populous urban area in Haiti. And so that's a huge amount of change and largely informal development. And so we, a number of times over the years since then, have attached cameras to cars that have been driving around the area and collected street-level imagery. And this provides an interesting glimpse into the rapidly changing urban landscape, which is very useful for organizations that might be working to improve the lives of the people trying to live and establish communities there. We've also used this post-disaster. I was down in Dominica after Hurricane Maria, and as the vehicles went around the island, assessing damages and delivering assistance, I suctioned a camera onto the hood and collected some 90,000 images of the road network of the island. And this allows people kind of a glimpse into the devastation that hit that island. Here somebody's commented, this really puts into perspective devastation across the country. And with some of the pictures of urban areas, you can see that, yeah, the devastation is pretty bad. And this provides an interesting kind of snapshot in time that you could use to track recovery efforts and track the recovery as things change. We've also had a chance more recently to test this domestically. My boss, Dale, was down helping American Red Cross in Florida after Hurricane Michael went through and convinced them to test a new rapid assessment workflow where as the cars drove around the city, they just suctioned some GoPros on either side and collected now some 360,000 images of Panama City showing the effects of the hurricane. As kind of initial test of what we could do with this, we used an Esri tool, photo survey, and let people answer a couple questions about each of the images, allowing us to kind of get a picture for where the worst damages were and test this workflow. So what's next? With that Esri photo survey tool, each series of questions is tied to a specific image, but we're collecting a ton of images. We want it to be useful for all that, like the 3D reconstructions, the street sign extraction, feature extraction, stuff like that. So we're taking images as fast and as frequently as possible. So a given house might have 5 or 6 images that are looking at it, and then you have 5 or 6 surveys tied to images and no way to really link that to that specific address. There are tools though. Mapillary has this cool function where you can query their API with a lat long and get images from their database that should be looking at those coordinates. So somebody has used this feature to build an OSM editing tool where they'll give it a list of features, so in this case crosswalks in a city, query all the images that should be looking at those crosswalks, and ask people to use those sets of images to answer a series of questions. So here, looking at handicap access, is there a cutout so that somebody in a wheelchair could use this crosswalk, and then adding that data to OSM. But we could use this same workflow to feed in either like a database of address points or even OSM building footprints, and have people use multiple images to assess a single map feature and have a much more efficient, useful workflow for damage assessment. Collecting a ton of images like in a disaster zone isn't always great if you need to push those images to the internet to use them effectively. So Mapillary has some great tools you can pan around a map and like select images and see, oh, like I'm looking for this bridge, is the bridge damaged? But in Dominica, where we only had like a satellite terminal to access internet, it's expensive and slow, we couldn't do that efficiently. So Max actually here is working on coding a simple tool that can be used offline to put all these images on an offline viewer so that, you know, if your assessment team went out and then came back and then your logistics guy needs to know if a truck can make it along the road, they can easily view those images that were collected early in the day and decide if he can dispatch that truck to that town to deliver aid. So bringing some of these workflows into an offline environment is hopefully a future improvement. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. I've covered, some of the stuff I've talked about is covered in more detail in a guest blog post that's up on Mapillary. The link's here, and also if you just search Mapillary Red Cross disaster data, you should probably find it as well. I'm always looking for help coding or engineering new solutions. And as always, you can contribute to these resources, Mapillary and OpenStreetCam, with your cell phone or Action Cam or something like that. So yeah, any questions?
What about the non-speaking English world? Like, all this stuff is in English, but not everybody speaks English.
So the question was about non-English speaking world. So yeah, Mapillary, I believe, has multiple internationalizations of their app. OpenStreetCam, I think it's a telenav project, and I think they're mostly focused on US roads. And all the software projects that we work on, like we put on GitHub, and so if someone wanted to take that and localize it, they'd be more than welcome to. We publish all our stuff under like a BSD3 license, so it's open and pretty permissive in terms of what people can do with it.
One more? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.